Welcome to Stories of Victory. My name's Travis. I'm an alcoholic and a person on a path of discovery and recovery. I was asked for a title for today's talk, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and I still don't really know. And I'm just pleased to be here, just to be a part of this Recovery 2.0 community, sharing my experience, strength, and hope, and what this has meant for me and my recovery. I'll talk for about 35 minutes. And then at the end, we'll open it up for any Q&A like most people have done with this format. So what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. That's what we do when we talk. Not to give a whole brief or long extended drunkalogue. I'll start kind of in high school, like when I really started to discover ways to run away from problems with drugs and alcohol and other behaviors and substances. I was a freshman in high school, and my stepdad and my mother had just divorced. There was an opportunity to start drinking with the baseball team, and the seniors on the baseball team, took us freshmen underneath their wings and, fed us booze. And it was in that moment that I completely fell in love with being numb and being able to run away. I came from a fairly normal upbringing. Like, there wasn't any extreme abuse or neglect or anything at all, but there was certainly a desire to run away from what I was experiencing. There was certainly a disconnection and I don't know, like an internal isolation from self. My stepdad, before that divorce, he was a Methodist pastor, and as we know, in recovery, and whether it's 12-step rooms or in recovery 2.0, at the root of most of all of our problems is that disconnection from universe, source, higher power, God, whatever you want to call that thing. There is just a disconnection, and I think that we can all agree upon that. And for me, that moment, whenever I was handed that bottle of Everclear in the truck as we were cruising around good old Ava, Missouri, I started to feel connected to something, drugs and alcohol, and that ability to run away that filled that void. That continued on for several years. So from the time that I was 15 years old until I was 20, drugs and alcohol were my go-tos. As I got a little bit older and I could, drive myself around, I quickly found that I loved the music community. I loved going to concerts, not just because of the music, but more so because that is where I could just get as wasted as I wanted to get, do whatever I wanted to do, and it was okay. I quickly fell in love with psychedelics of all kinds. I had this notion in my mind that LSD and mushrooms were going to somehow connect me to consciousness, God. There was some portal that was going to be the magic gateway to get there. And I tried real hard to get there, because deep down I know that it's what I was craving for so long. I wanted that reconnection, and the connection that I knew in childhood, being in the Methodist church. I did not want that because I saw the dark side of that, and I wanted to run as far away as I could. So much so, I used to still do love Tori Amos, and she had a shirt I got at one of her concerts, and it said "Recovering Christian." And if that wasn't a precursor for what was to come, I don't know what else would be. But I wanted that connection. I wanted to feel a part of, because I felt so disconnected from. And I found that in drugs and alcohol, and I found it in the connections with where I was at, whether it was taken off and following fish for a couple weeks, or whatever band may have been in town. I was seeking it there. February of '99, I had a horrible acid trip, and so much so that it was the first time where I ever got truly scared. And I called my mom, and my dad ended up coming to pick me up. I was going to college about 3 hours away, and they took me home. And I went back to what I knew, and we went to church at the Methodist church, and I truly felt a connection. I truly felt touched by God, and I was asked not to go back to school, but I went ahead and went back to school. And when I did, I knew that I had to change some behaviors. And so I got connected with a group on campus called the Wesley House, which was the campus ministry for the Methodists. And I met some great friends. I truly experienced unconditional love from a friend. And we ended up working that summer at a camp up in Iowa. And at that camp, at the end of the summer, we had a group that came through who had just been traveling around South America. And they had asked if there was anyone interested in doing something similar that they were doing. And if so, reach out and audition. They were a band of sorts. And so I auditioned for it. And when I drove, this was before I had a cell phone, so I drove the 6 hours back home, not knowing what I was going to be doing in the fall, whether it was going to school or being a part of this group. I knew that I would either be going to French-speaking East Africa, Germany and Denmark, or India and Nepal. And so I got back home, and I think mom came out and said that I had missed a phone call, and I called them back, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to go to India and Nepal?" And I was sure, and really wasn't super excited, didn't know a whole lot about it, but I knew that there was something that was calling me to go there. So we pack up our bags and get together, and off we go on this amazing adventure. Now, granted, at this time, I was still just doing what I thought I knew. And at that time, it was, being a part of the Methodist Church, and this was this Lutheran organization. And with that in me, there was a lot of fear-based behavior. Like, I have to do a certain thing because if I don't do these things, I'm going to go to hell. And I lived with that fear. And I knew that God was love. I knew that there was a thing called grace. I also knew that there was this us versus them mentality, and I was really confused. And while I was in India, I encountered and built relationships with so many people of many different faiths and spiritual backgrounds. And it was really confusing for me because what I wanted to be, I was experiencing from people who didn't think like me. And I really struggled. And all the while, like, since that time happened and I had gone back home, like, I was really trying to be sober. Looking back on it now, I was just white knuckling it. And while I was in India and Nepal, and I was going through all these really, confusing experiences, I started to drink a little bit. And then by the time we were in Nepal, I was smoking weed on the rooftop with Australians and Germans, and just back to the way I was. But the experiences that I had while I was there, one in particular, we were at a place called Lake Nagarjuna, which is in southern India. And Nagarjuna himself, he was like the first, I guess, contemporary, apostle of Gautama Buddha. And he, took the message of the Buddha from northern India into southern India. And it was there, like, there was some ancient, like, relics of their monastery, and like where their fire pits were, kind of like dug down into this huge hill. And energetically, like, I could feel something. Like, it was pretty powerful, so much so that any fear of something being different was kind of like just letting go of that grip that it had on me and my understanding. And from that, I really feel like something was growing within. Granted, it took 17 and a half years for it to start to sprout, but I came back to the States after that experience there, even more confused, more depressed, more anxiety, and quickly came back to drugs and alcohol. I knew that the psychedelics were something that I did not want to get back into, just because of what I felt was like damaging my mental health. But really everything else was, whether it was drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, like all these things I was experiencing firsthand, because I was just trying to numb out. Life began to happen really quickly when I got back, especially after I graduated from college. I did end up getting degrees in psychology and religious studies, just because that's what I wanted to study. So I started dating this woman, and she got pregnant. We got married. We had some more kids, and I'm just really blowing through this because I don't want to talk a whole lot more about what it was like then. I want to talk about what happened and what it's like now. But life happened. I made choices. I drank. I used. I ran away from, and I felt like I had every reason to. I wanted to blame everyone and everything for the way that I was feeling, and did not want to take any ownership of what my part was in anything. In January of 2017, I finally came to a place of almost surrender. I knew it was bad enough. I knew that I did not like the way that I felt. I knew that there had to be something different from the way that I was feeling. And so the whole new year, new me mentality in 2017, I was thinking back on when in my life had I felt ease, when in my life had I felt a little bit of like true happiness and comfort. And my thoughts brought me back to a time in southern India. We were in a town called Kodaikanal, and it is a hill station up in the mountains in Andhra Pradesh. And the cool thing about Kodaikanal is that it houses the summer ashram, or then the summer ashram of Satya Sai Baba. And he had a ton of devotees there at the time we were there from, Australia, Europe, even people in the States. And the people that I met there and that I encountered there were showing me really how I wanted to be, but I was scared to be. They were there, there was some type of yoga training or retreat or something of the sort. I don't know specifically what it was, but I knew that those were my people. And so January 2017, I stumbled into a yoga studio here in Springfield, Missouri. And when I did that, I had no idea what was about to happen. I felt very awkward. I was very nervous. And I stood to the back of the room, and he had a little library back there. And I just picked up a random book and I opened it up. And the book that I picked up just so happened to be 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. And I opened it up to step 6. And I bawled. Step 6, if you don't know what that says, it's we're entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. And I was done. I was absolutely done. And so here I am crying uncontrollably, snot, can't speak, just gone. And the man who owned the studio, his name just happened to be Bill. Coincidence? Probably not. My sponsor always says, is it odd or is it God? It's usually the latter, if not always. It's always the latter. And he reassured me that everything was okay and I was in the right spot. And if I just wanted to roll out my mat and sit there during class, that was just fine. I'm where I needed to be. And I did that. And I sat there and I composed myself and I breathed. And I can't say that I enjoyed the class, but I experienced the class and I allowed myself to have that experience. And after that class, Bill and I just began this beautiful friendship. Come to find out, Bill was also a friend of Bill's. He had gone through the 12 steps. He was very, not at the time anymore, but at one point in his life, he was very active within Alcoholics Anonymous and had a great understanding of what a life in recovery was. And he could relate to me and I could relate to him, and I trusted him. But it wasn't until 3 months later that I went into a 12-step meeting and just let it go and allowed this process to happen. So about this same time as all this was happening, so I've got, the interest in yoga and now the 12 steps, I came across a website, and the website was 12step.org, because I was trying to understand what these 12 steps were all about. And this is where I first encountered Tommy Rosen. On this website, in each steps, it breaks it down. And there's videos and there's different perspectives on each step. One is like a Baptist preacher. One guy is like from the streets. And then here's this super chill and calm man talking about this yoga perspective. And it was Tommy Rosen. And of course, then I, do the deep dive into Google and found out that, there was this book, Recovery 2.0. And I don't think it was in April. It may have been May or June of that year. I got the book and went to the park, put up my hammock, and just devoured this book and felt just so connected with Tommy's story, with his perspective, and could relate so much to what he had going on. But it's 2017, and the R20 community was just not what it is now. But the interest in yoga and that being a part of my recovery, that was still happening. And the R20 stuff, even just the like the membership, then it was just different. For those of you that weren't around then, it's just different. And of course, everything is different now with how we interact, especially in this community. But I stayed sober. Relapse, well, at least with drugs and alcohol, is not a part of my story. I love so much with Tommy and the efforts and just the deeper understanding with recovery, because it's all encompassing. I love when we can talk about the big six. We can talk about drugs and alcohol. We can talk about food, we can talk about relationships, money, technology, and the frequency of addiction, and all these things and all these concepts that I was learning about recovery and life. I wasn't necessarily hearing in some of the other 12-step groups that I was a part of. But for me, it resonated deeply, and I wanted to understand it more than what I was understanding it. And so I kept coming back, because I didn't know. I began working the steps with my sponsor at that time, and I can remember sitting outside of an AA meeting with my sponsor in his car, and we were working through step 2. And here I am writing out what God, what higher power was to me. And it was the first time I could really express without fear, without hesitation, what God was. And it was a little bit of Jesus, a little bit of Buddha, a little bit of Ganesha, a little bit of Kali, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I let all that other stuff just go. Like the fear of the unknown, it just started to go away. And I could really just start to understand, start to being the operative word there. I don't think I still understand it, but I can trust it because I've experienced it. I continue to allow myself to have that experience through yoga and meditation and being of service. So 2019 then, so, the first couple years of recovery for me, um, were kind of sloppy. Like I really, I stumbled through, um, the relationship that I was in at that time. There's still like a lot of fear stuff there, and then still working through some of those things, to be honest with you. Um, because that's a huge part of what we do. Like we're learning to be human. The I think the first 164 pages of the big book is that instruction manual that we weren't born with, and how to be a decent human being. And through working those 12 steps, we start to uncover how to be that. Um, and I just know today I'm choosing to live that life. I don't always succeed, but I know that I can always come back to that place. In 2019, I was able to start my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and that in and of itself was a pretty interesting process. I learned a lot about ego. I learned a lot about the power of ego, and I also learned how unattractive it is to be the teacher. Um, and what I mean by that is, anytime I have been the quote unquote subject matter expert, I feel like in those moments, that's when I've turned the most people away. And I had to learn to remain the student. I wanted to do my yoga teacher training because I wanted to be a part of Tommy's community. Like I really wanted to be a part of that initial um, uh, yoga informed trainer facilitator thing that was happening. But the one thing that I had not done, I had not completed my 200-hour. So his training had passed. This 200-hour teacher training popped up, and I was like, okay, I've got to do this so that I can do that. But also too, I was also very interested in Nikki Meyer's yoga of 12-step recovery. And so as soon as I finished up my yoga teacher training, I then got my, the weekend certification with Nikki so that I could be a space holder with the Y12SR community. And so did all that and started a Y12SR meeting here in Springfield. And this was all right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it was just different and awkward at times, and stumbled through some things. But again, coming back to that place like of teacher versus student mentality, when it was really good, I felt connected as a student. When it felt sloppy, it's whenever I was coming at it from the teacher perspective. And one thing that I've learned in the rooms and still continue to learn is how to be one of many, instead of trying to think that I'm unique. We've all got that terminal uniqueness to us, and that's usually what gets us in trouble. And I try to limit that now, because life is so much better when I can just humble myself and I can come to things from a place of humility, where I'm coming into situations where I can learn something from somebody else instead of feeling like I have to teach something to somebody else. Life now, it's full, it's beautiful. I'm able to have a great relationship with my kids. I have a wonderful relationship with my family. I'm able to stay active, and life is very, very full. Like I think about what's happening this weekend, and man, like there hasn't been an hour of this weekend yet where there hasn't been something to be grateful for. Because I have a healthy body. My new obsession, and those people that know me who might be on here, there might need to be a Pickleballers Anonymous group, because I think I'm filling up a lot of my time with that. but it's beautiful. Spending a whole day yesterday at a pickleball tournament of all things, and just had the best time ever. Being able to be a part of a faith community where I can go and be of service and, paint a fence all morning. Yeah. So those of you wondering if I wear overalls all the time just because I'm from Missouri, the answer is no. I was just painting, and I got home in time for this thing. And I'm able to be of service. I'm able to connect with so many amazing people in this Recovery 2.0 community, because when we needed it, when I needed it most, Recovery 2.0 was right there. And I've made so many amazing connections and friendships with people from all over the world that I would probably have never known or met unless, we all just would have happened to have been at a Recovery 2.0 retreat, which I know one day I will get there. But Ken, I think, is going to start that group. I see that. And I'm so thankful for that, because every day of the week, there's meetings where you can come to and connect with and experience life with other like-minded folks in this community. For me, Alcoholics Anonymous is my foundation. I would not have Recovery 2.0 without it. I just know that. And that's my story. That's not everyone's story. And I like so much and respect so much about this community in particular, because you're not going to be judged based on any of that. It's your story. It's your experience. The 12 steps and the 12 efforts and what they have meant to me. It's a conscious life versus an unconscious life, a place of understanding versus a place of misunderstanding. And I've got a whole lot to learn, but I know that the experiences that I have now, when I can come from that place of love and understanding, it's a life beyond my wildest dreams. And the music scene now, we got to see the summer tour opener with Fish earlier in July, follow those yellow balloons, and got to be a part of a 12-step meeting at Set Break with the Fish show. And a couple of weeks ago, the kids and I went to see Dead and Company up in St. Louis. Again, another amazing Set Break meeting with the Wharf Rats. And just how cool is it that when we seek something out, when we want to be a part of the recovery community, no matter where we're at, it's there. And I'm just blessed beyond measure with that, and I'm so thankful. So yeah, that's my story. All right. Well, as we finish, I just invite you all to bring your hands to heart center. Everyone take a deep inhale and a long exhale as we say the Recovery 2.0 prayer. Universe, put us in the places you want us to be, with the people you want us to be with, doing the things you want us to do. Thank you for the joys and the challenges of our lives. Amen, Satnam, Namaste, Abwoon, Woohoo. Thank you everyone for coming.